But I'd like to move on back to foreign policy. We have a question now from the American School in Rio, from Nicholas Mizrahy. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, and he's in the 11th grade.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Mizrahy. I'm from 11th grade, studying at the Escola Americana de Rio de Janeiro. Your relationship with Israel is something you both often mention. Why is Israel such a focus if you have so many problems back home?
Did you? I believe this is to you.
Sure.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's a good question. The answer is actually both candidates believe Israel is a vital, important ally. And you point out something that I guess is easy to think in this election, in an election year. Why don't you pay attention to this? This is more important than that. Well, actually, a president has to pay attention to everything. And I think both candidates understand that. Israel is important because there are very, very, very few strategic American allies around the world who are completely surrounded by countries that want to destroy them. Not just attack them, not just limit them or contain them, but to literally wipe them off the map. And in the case of the Middle East, this is the only democracy, the only free parliamentary democracy in the Middle East, in a very volatile region that is stable, that is an open economy, and that has been a traditional ally of the West, and not just the United States, but pretty much of the whole free world. It is important when you're dealing with the very sensitive issues of the Middle East, especially around Israel and the occupied territories, that we do show consistent support for Israel, not completely at the expense of what's right and what's just when it comes down to a negotiation. But if we begin to show any serious doubt around that relationship, we could fundamentally change the dynamics of that region, and that could cause an extremely bloody outcome that I think both candidates want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
I really don't have much of a disagreement with what Kevin has said. Senator Obama certainly supports Israel strongly. They're our closest ally in the region for all the reasons that Kevin noted. Senator Obama supports Israel's right to self-defense up to and inclusive of the recent invasion into Lebanon as a matter of self-defense. Senator Obama co-sponsored a resolution condemning the involvement of Iran and Syria with Hezbollah in launching rocket attacks into the territory of Israel and Israel's right to defend itself in that situation. Senator Obama believes in trying to come up with a two-state solution that will be workable for both Israel and the Palestinians. He also believes that we've got to do something about preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons and posing a further threat to the state of Israel. And of course, he supports continued assistance to the state of Israel. They're, again, our strongest ally, and it's a policy that I don't think you'll find a whole lot of disagreement on between Democrats and Republicans.
Okay. Spinning the globe a little bit. On to another. We do have, I think this is the last foreign policy question, but this is on the Ukraine, and it's from Lidia Select from the Escola das Nações of Brasília.
Mr. Raymond, I have a question for both candidates. With the Ukraine likely to be the next powder keg and the tenuous relation with Russia, how will each aspirant to the White House maintain peace with Russia and preserve the United States superpower status?
That's a problem.
Steve, that's for you. Did you get that?
I'm sorry.
Let me repeat that then. Okay, with the Ukraine likely to be the next powder keg and the tenuous relations with Russia, how will each aspirant to the White House maintain peace with Russia and preserve the U.S. superpower status?
Well, it's a difficult question about what's going on in the region right now. I think the issue of what happened in Georgia recently is not as simple a matter as simply Russian aggression. There's been a complex situation playing out over the last 15 years in that region in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And the agreements that had been worked out actually placed Russian quote-unquote peacekeepers right into those regions. And what set off, if you followed any of the news about what happened there, what set off the attacks, the Russian attacks, may very well have been the fact that the Georgians themselves may have launched an attack onto Russian peacekeepers who were there. That doesn't justify in any means the level of force that the Russians used and the intensity of their reaction to it, assuming that that's exactly what played out. But there's a lot of competing stories about what happened there. So we're looking at something similar that could happen in Ukraine if Russia decides, well, we've been able to flex our muscle here, let's see how far we can push it into the next zone. I think it's a difficult situation. We still have to engage the Russians into some creative talks, and we also need to understand their concerns. We have had something in the United States for a couple of centuries now called the Monroe Doctrine, where we have not wanted to have other powers exert their control into this Western hemispheric sphere of influence. It seems to me that the Russians are reacting in some similar vein to the idea of Georgia and Ukraine joining NATO. And what exactly is the need and necessity for these two nations to join the NATO alliance right up upon the Russian border? It's understandable that they may perceive this as a threat. We need to be discussing with the Russians in a creative manner why it isn't a threat and in a way that will reduce those tensions.
Thank you. Kevin?
That's an excellent question, and I think it does go to the fundamentals of the vision for foreign policy. It's true that this isn't just a simple issue of Russian aggression. It's actually a complex issue of Russian undermining the security of the region with its very erratic exercise of its quote-unquote self-interest. The Russian regime is a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship run by a regime that routinely murders its opponents and jails people who don't cooperate with it. And it not only murders its opponents at home, it murders them abroad. There have been several high-profile cases of dissidents being poisoned, being shot, and it's going on. I mean, there's very little that we can do about it within Russia's borders, but there's a lot we can do about it across the border. And in terms of NATO membership, I think that is clearly one of the things that we must push for Ukraine. If Ukraine is left to twist in the wind in a way that, unfortunately, we were too late to the party with Georgia, that will be a tremendous loss for the West and for the European Union in particular, not just for the United States. We have to be very, very concerned. Ask the Baltic states, ask Poland, ask Romania, ask all of these countries what NATO membership has meant for them. Ask them what European Union membership has meant for them. It has meant, in some cases, the difference between freedom and totalitarian hegemony. And the Russians are still trying to subvert activity. They're using internet terrorism on the Baltic states to try and interfere with their ability to conduct commerce. It is part of a strategy by the Russians to use this sort of behavior to retake what they may see as their territory. Frankly, yes, I understand the whole concept of the Monroe Doctrine, but we're talking about a country that is a dictatorship, that is using military force in its near abroad to subjugate its neighbors. And that's just something that we have to, with our allies, draw a line on.